Texas's anti-abortion law is set to take effect on September 1st. Now, it is already being challenged in the courts, and there is some possibility that the courts will put a pause on the law going into effect, but we'll wait and see if that's likely to happen. It's already August 30th as we speak. So in just 2 days, this horrible law will take place. Now, what is the anti-abortion law? Well, it bans abortions after 6 weeks. And the majority of women who become pregnant don't know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. A lot of them don't know until a little later. And so this is effectively an abortion ban. But there are other provisions in this law that we should be incredibly concerned about, because it pits Americans against one another, and it offers a monetary reward for those who engage in this. Now, the anti-abortion law deputizes private citizens to actively seek out and sue people aiding or abetting women who are attempting to get abortions in the state of Texas. If you successfully sue that person, whether it's an abortion provider, a pregnant woman's friend, or even a rideshare driver who dropped her off at the clinic, you receive a $10,000 bounty. Now, you don't even have to be a resident in Texas. You could live anywhere in the country and engage in this disgusting behavior, trying to catch people who are getting alleged illegal abortions. And that's what makes this such a nefarious and awful law. Now, under the law, anyone anywhere in the US can bring a lawsuit, not just a Texas resident, which is a radical departure from the normal rules of litigation. And just to give you a few more details before I go to you, Cenk, beyond deputizing private citizens, the statute's main goal is to saddle clinics with lawsuits and legal fees. Additionally, if a private citizen successfully sues a clinic, that provider is responsible for paying for the winner's legal fees. It's simply a backdoor way to shut down clinics. So think about it. People could even bring forth frivolous or unfounded lawsuits, and the very nature of having to fight that lawsuit in court is so expensive that the abortion provider runs the risk of going bankrupt or losing the financial ability to even run that clinic in the first place. And that's very much the intention behind this law.
Yeah, this law is a disaster in a 1,000 different ways. First of all, it basically bans abortion. So if the courts allow it, okay, it's not gonna be just Texas. Instantly, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and so many other states. In fact, the majority of our states, even though the country is 70% pro-choice, Republicans control a majority of the states. A lot of the states have smaller populations. The larger population states are blue states, except for Texas. And so most of the country will have banned abortion. So let's just be clear about that. And when you vote for a Republican, you vote to ban abortion, period. I don't know why anybody still kids themselves that they're not. They've passed it every time they've had an opportunity. The only thing that's protected folks is the courts, but that's breaking down, as you see here. Second nefarious part of that is that since they're allowing the vigilante justice or injustice in this case, and they're allowing people to sue the clinics into bankruptcy, it's their cute little loophole of saying, well, the state didn't do it. The state didn't ban abortion. We just allowed for civil lawsuits, and I guess people did the lawsuits. There's nothing we can do about that. Now, any real court that looked at that objectively and honestly would say, no, the state passed the law that allowed for that. It's obviously a state action. It's obviously intended to ban abortions, and this is unconstitutional. Are the conservative justices in that area and then in the Supreme Court going to be honest? At best, it's 50-50. So this thing could stand and abortion could be over. And then now let's finally talk about the vigilante portion of this. So now snitches get riches. So now they're all gonna go around like, oh, is anybody having an abortion? Now, how many false reports do you think there's gonna be? Tons and tons. Now we've turned everything into a witch hunt. What's the woman doing? Is she 6 weeks into her pregnancy? Well, who could tell? Nobody could tell at 6 weeks. She can't even tell oftentimes at 6 weeks. And so, and now everybody's looking, did she have sex recently? Has it been 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks? I wanna get that $10,000. By the way, $10,000 is a lot of money. A lot of people are gonna wanna get it. And so now they're gonna have everybody in the state and outside the state monitoring the sex lives of all of the women in the state to try to cash in on a witch hunt. This is insanity. We've reverted to totally barbaric state in places like Texas. And the Taliban would look at this rule and go,
pretty good.
That's a pretty interesting rule. That's smart in Texas. Yeah. That way you can subjugate women while pretending not to, huh?
The good news is though, through the passage of this kind of law, we know that the lawmakers in the state of Texas really do care about human lives. Because that's what they cite for passing these types of restrictive reproductive laws. They really do value human lives. Oh wait, except they don't, which is abundantly clear in the way the state has handled coronavirus. It's one of the country's hotspots when it comes to coronavirus. I mean, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick could not wait in the very beginning of the pandemic to force people to get to work, even as coronavirus numbers were spiking, even as hundreds of thousands of Americans were likely to die and did die as a result of that kind of thinking. They don't actually care about human lives, and I think that it's really clear to people who are paying attention to that. It's a way of controlling women. For right-wing politicians, it's an attempt to gain brownie points among evangelical right-wing voters. And for others who are single-issue voters, sure, are there some Christians who genuinely think a zygote is the equivalent of a living, breathing human being? Sure, but I don't see them protesting or organizing to do anything about the feckless, awful behavior of local lawmakers who won't do the right thing in regard to COVID, okay? Seems like there's a lot more interest in controlling people's lives and particularly controlling women's bodies. And then you get to a fun twist to this story, because there is a fun twist, believe it or not. TikTokers have come to the rescue, at least to give us a little comedic relief when it comes to this awful story. So there are anti-choice groups who have set up websites. So if you want to possibly be a snitch and maybe win that bounty, you can put in your accusations or your claims, basically tips, if you suspect that someone is either conducting an abortion or getting an abortion. And so the Texas Right to Life recently launched a website that asks pro-life whistleblowers to anonymously submit tips on people they believe are seeking out abortions. And so TikTokers were like, oh, that's interesting. You got a website where we can submit things. How about some Shrek porn? Let's watch.
All right, y'all, we're gonna mess with Greg Abbott and all the other idiots that decided to outlaw abortion in Texas after 6 weeks. Thank you so much to my friend Olivia for coming up with this absolutely brilliant idea. So if you go to prolifewhistleblower.com, which I'm gonna put in the caption down below, you can see that Texas has anonymously set up a system where you can report people who have gotten abortions. Wouldn't it be so awful if we sent in a bunch of fake tips and crashed the site? Like, Greg Abbott's butt stinks. Spelt wrong, of course, because he deserves zero respect. How did you obtain this evidence? Smelt it from here in California. The doctor responsible, Dr. Stinkbutt. For the geographical information, just pick a random place in Texas, random city and zip code. And are you currently elected to public office? Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. Yay!
Found this website for like anonymously snitching on people who break the Texas Heartbeat Act, which is like some gay pro-life. And you can attach any file you want to it. So I just sent them a bunch of Shrek porn, and you can do it too. Go to that link.
So these right-wing zealots went into action as soon as they noticed that their little website was being flooded with things that they didn't ask for. So the site now blocks people from outside of the country, as well as people who are using VPNs to mask their locations, and people with a history of trying to spam the site by, say, submitting false reports. So certain IP addresses have been completely blocked from the website as a result of them going in and spamming the website with fun things like Shrek porn, which I didn't know existed, but it does. Of course it does.
Well, TikTok is the hope that 2021 didn't know it needed. And so I love the way that they mess with right-wingers, and I love the way that they're unapologetic. Because you have to remember, people who grew up on mainstream media, they see stuff like that and they would very heavily frown upon that. They would say, now this is some youngsters on TikTok doing this, but this is an outrage, messing with an official website. It's not an outrage at all. Go mess with them 1,000 times more.
100%.
Okay, they're asking you to spy in on women and their sex lives and try to get rich off of it by reporting them rightly or wrongly for potentially having an abortion, which is none of their goddamn business. So let me just be clear on two things. One is, Anna's right. I used to think that there were people who were genuinely pro-life. Now, I didn't agree with them. I don't think the zygotes are fully formed humans. Well, seems to be a fact. But anyway, I thought that was their genuine opinion. And I once saw a bumper sticker that was pro-life on the issue of abortion and was against war. And I was like, oh, okay, that's like a consistent pro-life position. I respect that. I might not agree with every part of it, but I respect it, right? But now you see, there are no pro-lifers. There's almost none. There's like 3 in the whole country. No, when it comes to COVID, they're like, kill them, kill them. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick that Anna referred to in Texas, he said, well, look, older people might have to die so we can open up businesses. You're pro-life? You voted for that guy, you're pro-life? And we can go on, drone strikes that kill civilians and children in the rest of the world, in Afghanistan, Yemen, etc. Kill them, kill them, kill them. Wars for Iraq, on. We can go on and on. You're not pro-life. So just stop lying to yourself, let alone us. So if you're not pro-life, you never meant it in the first place. So when people are actually alive, you don't give a goddamn about them, right? But when they're zygotes, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that's the one life I care about. Why? Oh, just a coincidence that I would have to take control of women's bodies to execute this. Well, golly gee, what an unintended consequence. Now women have to do what men say all the time, and they can't even control their own bodies. Imagine if you did that to men. Imagine the cries of freedom, freedom.
I think that, if we live in a country that considers itself fair, then there should be criminality attached to spank and salami. Sorry, no, I mean, because where does it end? If a zygote is considered life, why isn't sperm considered life? Are you spilling seed? Huh? You wanking off for pleasure? No, you got prosecution. There should be prosecution.
By the way, it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible.
Right to life. Right to life. Don't spill that seed, boy. We gotta come after them.
Yeah.
No, see how ridiculous that sounds? Because it is ridiculous.
If I've learned anything from Monty Python, it's that every sperm is sacred. And it's in the Bible, it's called onanism. And so men are guilty if they ever spill their seed without it going into a woman and impregnate her. Guilty, guilty. We should take their freedom away and make sure that they cannot control their own bodies, and we should snitch on them. If you ever see a guy doing it, you get $10,000, right? Boy, you'd be so rich. The government couldn't possibly afford that. Now, it sounds absurd when you say it about men, but when you say it about women, not only that, forget like pleasuring yourself, which is a momentary act. No, you must carry that baby for 9 months, 10 months. You must take care of it for 18 years. You're an indentured servant of the state of Texas. Freedom, my ass. Texas doesn't believe in freedom. Conservatives don't believe in freedom. When it comes to women, they believe in subjugation and basically slavery. Go have our kids, or sometimes your rapist kids. That's how the sick right wing in this country treat women. And I don't care that the media coddles them. Oh, they're pro-life, they could be just as valid. Women, make sure you're having babies upon their command. By the way, they're for freedom. No, you're goddamn liars. You hate freedom. All you care about is power for yourself and subjugation of everyone else. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. I really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.